Good afternoon. We're convening the third hearing of the Higher Education and Technology Committee today of February 3rd, 2 p.m. via video conference in conference room 309 at the Hawaii State Capitol. We're hearing 6 bills concerning the university system and how we serve our post-secondary students today. My name is Amy Prusso. I'm currently serving as chair, and in the room with us we also have Vice Chair Janae Capella, Rep. Lisa Martin, Rep. Justin Woodson, Rep. Rose Martinez, and Rep. Diamond Garcia. We provided some basic guidelines earlier, and we're going to go back and review those guidelines for the procedures today. And Vice Chair will help us do that.
In order to allow as many testifiers as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. We will be enforcing this time limit today. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function, for those of you who are joining on Zoom, will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat for technical issues only. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected whilst presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note that the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please refrain from using profanity or any uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing with or without the ability to rejoin. That is for Zoom and in person. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to start by hearing testimony on HB 554, and we're going to start with Director Rose, University of Hawaii, in support and in person. Hi.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair.
If you can come to the microphone, please, so that the folks who are online can hear you. Sorry, I didn't recognize you with the mask on.
Okay, now you do.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Jennifer Rose on behalf of Vice President Jan Govea, University of Hawaii, and we stand on our testimony. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Candace Park, Deputy Attorney General, with comments on Zoom or in person.
In person. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We just wanted to point out that there's error on.
We saw that.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
We
Thank
got your
you.
testimony. Thank you. Next, we have Daintree Bartolidis from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities in support.
Stand under testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Goloyu, Stonewall Caucus of Democratic Party, in support on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Representative Michael Goloyu Jr., Chair of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We stand in strong support of this measure. We thank the maker for introducing this, as well as for making sure that the LGBTQIA plus community was included. Far too often when bills like this are drafted, we are left out, and therefore we are excluded when people actually go to do the training and making sure that the needs of our community are met. So we stand in full support, and we hope that this bill will move forward with everybody's support. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Mike Goloyu Sr., Rainbow Family 808, in support. Anna Ezi, Every Voice Coalition, in support on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella, and honorable members of the House Higher Education and Technology Committee. My name is Anna Ezi, and I'm the Co-State Director of the Every Voice Coalition Hawaii, a student-led organization working to end sexual violence on college campuses. I'm also a graduate student at the University of Hawaii. I appreciate the opportunity today to testify in support of HB 554. The resources codified by this bill will make the difference for many student survivors between asking for help or staying silent, between remaining in school and graduating with their degree or leaving school without a degree carrying only loan debt. While all students have the right to access education regardless of their gender, right now at the University of Hawaii, access is not equal. The 2021 UH Campus Climate Survey showed that female graduate students, my personal cohort, experienced the highest rates of sexual harassment among cohorts and reported almost twice the rate of sexual harassment from faculty. 50% of their sexual harassment was from faculty, as compared to undergraduate women, where they experienced 30% of their sexual harassment from faculty. HB 554 provides an upstream solution to harassment, mandatory, comprehensive annual prevention and awareness training for employees and students. 1 in 5 students living in campus housing reported experiencing dating or domestic violence while enrolled at UH. Pair this statistic with mostly dry dorms, meaning no alcohol is allowed regardless of age, and we see a dangerous situation for a survivor afraid to get in trouble for reporting an assault that involved alcohol. We need amnesty for reporting parties to ensure that safety is a priority in these situations. HB 554 equips our communities with both upstream measures as well as essential response measures so we can get campus gender violence under control. Mahalo for your time and for hearing our voices.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have AAUW of Hawaii in support, Chris Caulfield, Imu Alliance in support, Angelina Mercado, Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence in support, in person. Please.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. I'm Angelina Mercado, the Executive Director of the Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. On behalf of our 28 members, we support this measure. As an individual aspiring future law school student at Richardson, I definitely support this measure. The parking lot right behind the Richardson Law School when I went to visit campus, and I know I would be an evening part-time student, was something that I definitely thought about, and I definitely contemplated at what my future might look like as a law school student. So I urge you on behalf of our members and myself individually to please pass this measure. Aloha.
Thank you for your testimony. We have Nikos Leverance, Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support. And then we have an additional 24 individuals all in support. We also have Lily James in support on Zoom. Is she here?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Aloha, Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella, and honorable members of the House Higher Education and Technology Committee. My name is Lily Bowen James. I'm a 2021 college graduate and serve as co-executive director of the Every Voice Coalition, and I'm testifying in support of HB 554. As you know, Every Voice is a student, young alum, and survivor-led organization that has fought tirelessly on behalf of survivor and student rights in Hawaii to bring HB 554 before you today. You've likely heard the statistics about prevalence, so what I want to focus on right now is that student survivors are not receiving the support they need following an experience of sexual violence. A 2021 University of Hawaii study showed that 5 out of 6 students who experience gender-based harassment do not access UH resources. So while heartbreaking, it's not surprising that subsequently 82% of UH students reported negative consequences after experiencing sexual violence at UH. This is an outrage, and these statistics track across the entire country, but our society has grown numb to the realities that students face in their communities. The components of HB 554 take common sense steps to ensure that students are able to receive the support they need in order to first and foremost heal from trauma, simultaneously pursue their education, and ensures institutions are better prepared to prevent the violence. And I also do want to share that these components have been implemented in other states before, which have passed sister bills to this one. It is something that we can and will solve together, but it is something we cannot keep waiting to address, because every year we wait, we are putting thousands of students at risk when we could have done more. I just want to thank you for listening deeply to the voices of students and student survivors, and urge the committee to vote HB 554 favorably out of committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, we have no additional testifiers. Is there anybody in the room who would like to submit testimony? Please come to the front.
Aloha, Kayaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and the HET Committee. My name is Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support. Preventing sexual violence of all types requires a shift in culture and climate, according to the CDC, the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, published in 2016. Primary prevention, preventing violence before it occurs, and these sorts of prevention and implementation takes time. Cultural change doesn't happen overnight, but cultural change does happen. Studies show that 1 in 5 women experience attempted sexual assault during college years. So that's research from the CDC. And, a lot of times teachers, students, and staff, they will minimize or normalize sexual violence because maybe perhaps they're not equipped with resources or with training, and they just don't know how to respond to these situations. So it is absolutely imperative, with the insidious nature of the crimes that are occurring at UH, that you've probably heard stories about, to move this measure forward so that teachers, students, and staff can receive mandatory training. Thank you for the
Thank you
opportunity
so
to
much.
testify.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Members, are there any questions?
Another question. Oh, sorry.
Rep. Garcia.
Thank you. This question will be germane. Thank you. For the university, thank you. Question, what current safeguards does UH have currently to mitigate sexual violence on campus, and are there current trainings that's required of staff and students?
Thanks for that question, Representative. I think I tried to detail in my testimony. I didn't know I had the really the pleasure of being able to meet with Chair Peruso and Vice Chair Capella to sort of outline what our training plan has been over the years. Since I have been at the university, I'm now the Executive Director of the Office of Equity Assurance, which is a newly formed office that has taken in our EEO AA office, our Manoa Title IX office, and formerly our Office of Institutional Equity, which I ran. And in that former office, our primary thrust was system policies that were consistent for all of our 10 campuses, and creating, like you were saying, the safeguards and the infrastructure so that we can improve reporting. So some of the trainings that we have conducted are detailed in our testimony. So if you have any particular questions, we do have mandatory training for employees. It's every other year. We have training for executives that's also mandatory. We have training, and those include decision makers in the disciplinary process. We have training for anybody that touches Title IX or Violence Against Women's Act type of allegations or sex discrimination. And we have an extensive training for those folks that are investigating, advocates, campus security officers, and then we also have training for students. And campuses on the campus level may do more than that. They could have extensive training for orientation and transfer students. There's training for student athletes, et cetera. So for certain types of student populations, there may be more training than what we're doing at the system level, but we try to ensure that there is a consistency as far as what we're training. And we have had recent trauma-informed training. I really appreciate Vice Chair Capella's push for that, because as we know from the statewide push, that this is something, if Hawaii is trying to be a trauma-informed state, then it should be happening with all state entities. So I hope that's going to be happening in a consistent push, but that's a little bit, just a highlight. I don't want to take up too much time because I think members might have other questions.
And those current trainings are mandatory, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Rep. Mariyoshi.
Thank you for being here. I think there was a lot of good that this bill could do. I am a little concerned, though, about the scope and breadth of what students have, the kinds of trainings that students have to go through. You noted in your testimony that you're going to need at least 4 positions and about $1 million to implement this. And in speaking with other more recent UH grads, they already go through 5+ hours of training before they can even register. I'm wondering if we can, well, A, how practical you think it is to add even more training onto that, or, and kind of B, do you think there's other trainings that we could drop to maybe make it not an entire day or multi-day mandatory training for these students?
I think that is a really great question, and a recent focus group and discussions that we've had with other institutions and their Title IX offices, one concern is student fatigue, and we never want the discussion about sexual violence or gender violence to be attached in a negative way. I mean, just off the top of my head, I would really love to think about that question more, but I think I wouldn't say drop it if there was a way to incorporate what we're already doing. I'll just give you an example. For our online training, it's with formerly Everfi Vector Solutions. They pretty much monopolized the entire space as far as being the biggest viable vendor that everyone uses. There is no way that no matter how good that content is, and I think it's pretty good, it's going to be culturally competent for our islands. So you have to actually take a look at that, and that's why I'm requesting respectfully for more time to have that discussion, because I actually think that's a really good discussion. Then you would take any content that coming from the continental US and actually have experts, from the Native Hawaiian community, from the LGBTQ community, to look at how do you make that culturally relevant and culturally appropriate for our context. Because there is not going to be any, off-the-shelf version that we're ever going to find. It's going to take a lot of work and stakeholders. And I will say that we ran out of time. I wanted to say that with the AG's office, they had a sort of pilot project through VOCA monies that they received where they did, and I think Angie was part of this. It was like an 18-month project where we were creating a baseline training for all victim advocates statewide, and it was trauma informed, and it was culturally competent, it was gender inclusive, and it took so long for all those different experts, I'm looking at Angie, to come together, and these are people that this is what they did every day because it was specific to gender violence. So I do think, Representative Maraoshi, that is something that I would like to consider, because I think the worst thing would be fatigue. We want the majority of students to feel like this is something that they can handle during their academic workload, and this is something positive for them. So I do know that it's a relevant concern that some student affairs leaders worry that if it's tied to anything punitive, that will limit a student's access to their education. So these are some of the issues that we've grappled with, and I would like to take some time and maybe dialogue with you more and Vice Chair Capella around that issue, because I wouldn't want to say a switch out, but I do think that 5 hours, students will think 2 hours is too much. And the other thing that we learned through our peer groups is that bite size is the way. So 15 minutes of consent training in an online space, being able to use your mobile phone is much more effective, but we don't have a lot of data on the true effectiveness in terms of being a primary prevention tool. And that is just where we are in the Title IX VAWA world. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now, we'll have that data.
Additional? Yes, go ahead.
So, and just to clarify, because I do know that creating these training programs takes a very long time. The $1 million you're asking for in the 4 positions, is that an ongoing cost? That would be about $1 million a year to do all this training each year?
I did a lot of different estimates based on when I started the Office of Institutional Equity, which was responsible for all 10 campuses. So it's pretty much similar in scale. And we have 5 of us. There were 5 of us. So not having the senior staff, because you do need subject matter experts like Angie Mercado to be able to sit in, and people that know how to train, because it's a particular kind of skill set to look at, okay, the things that I appreciated about your bill, Vice Chair Capella, was that you were looking at skills, knowledge, attitude, and behavior. Right? And so I'm looking at a teacher right here. I know Chair Peruso understands this, that it would take that sort of level of senior expertise, and I think it would need to be on an ongoing basis, because we would have to continue to change the curricula for the changing needs of our LGBTQ plus community, our indigenous communities, and then the senior folks would be able to track, right? Because we need to be able to track through a learning management system, whether folks are taking it, if they're only halfway through, how do we get to this group that seems to, this subpopulation of students that is resistant, what do we do? So I think we would need live trainers, we would need folks that would know on the administrative end, and folks that really know how to develop curricula, and it should be, I think it would need to be on an ongoing basis.
Okay. One quick question. How soon do you think you could get this stood up then? If it sounds like a lot of lead time, what's practical for you?
You mean to actually have to start the annual training?
Yes.
Maybe a year and a half or 2 years. I would go slow by taking what we already have and try to do some pilots with certain students. If we could do that in small groups of live students, say graduate students, and start to pilot that curricula the way we did with our gender and queer ally inclusivity pilot that took a year, and that was a dedicated advocate that did that, and we only did small pockets of Title IX coordinators and investigative staff. So I would say 2 years before the actual launch, but that you could actually have a live curricula out there in a year.
Okay, thank you.
And I love talking about these kind of things.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Director Rose? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, moving on to HB 580, which would expand the victim counselor privilege under the Hawaii Rules of Evidence to include confidential advocates employed by the University of Hawaii. Again, first we have Director Rose, University of Hawaii in support in person. Sorry to bring you back up here, but
I should have stayed. I forgot. Thank you, Chair. The university stands in support of this measure. We have supported it for the last 3 years, and we think it's actually very important for confidential advocates on our campuses to have the same kinds of privilege, evidentiary privilege communications with their clients as community advocates do. Thank you. And I'll be available for questions.
Thank you. On Zoom, we have Anna Ezzi, Every Voice Coalition, in support.
Aloha Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella, and honorable members of the House Higher Education and Technology Committee. My name is Anna Ezzi, and I'm the co-state director of the Every Voice Coalition Hawaii, and I'm also a graduate student at the University of Hawaii. Mahalo for the opportunity to submit testimony in support of HB 580. Passing HB 580 is crucial to sustaining trust between confidential advocates and the campus communities they serve by ensuring advocates are truly confidential. No victim should be barred from accessing a confidential advocate because they fear losing control over their story by having it shared without their consent. But in 2021, 1 in 5 victims at the University of Hawaii shared in the campus climate survey that they did not report their experiences because they feared it would not be kept confidential. As a student at the University of Hawaii, I'm here to emphasize how valuable the confidential advocate program is, and victim counselor privilege is required to match the responsibility of managing the sensitive information that is a survivor's story. Thank you so much for the opportunity to submit testimony in support of HB 580, and mahalo for supporting the health and safety of Hawaii students.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have AAUW in support. Then we have Angelina Mercado, Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in support.
I stand on my testimony.
Thank you. We also have Lily James in support on Zoom.
Aloha again. My name is Lily James, and I'm here testifying in support of HB 580. As I shared in my previous testimony today, student survivors are currently not receiving the support they need following experiences of sexual violence. Very simply, expanding victim counselor privilege to include confidential advocates is a crucial step to ensuring students can access resources and receive the support they need. Advocates serve as a critical point person to direct students to resources and facilitate accommodations and ensure that lack of knowledge is not a barrier for access. Thank you so much for listening to the voices of students. And I also will add that I am also available for questions on either this bill or the previous bill, if that is helpful. Mahalo.
Thank you so much. So in addition to that testimony, we have the Democratic Party of Hawaii Education Caucus, Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, both in support, and about 14 other individuals, all in support. Members, are there any questions? Members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to the next. Oh, did you want to testify? I think that I cannot allow testimony once I've gone on to member questions. Yes. Is that accurate?
I mean, you do whatever you want. But
I can? Okay, yes, please, come. Okay.
Aloha Kayaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and the HED Committee. My name is Angela. I'm testifying on behalf of CARES in strong support of HB 580 for the victim counselor privilege. So the purpose of this act is to expand the victim counselor privilege under the Hawaii Rules of Evidence to include confidential advocates. A confidential advocate is a person who is designated by the University of Hawaii pursuant to Section 304A-120 to confidentially discuss sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and related issues with victims. And this person has to have undergone a minimum of 35 hours of training, and whose primary function is the rendering of advice, crisis counseling, and assistance to victims. So this is very much so necessary to help UH students and to support the safety and the health of our students. Can you imagine if there was a pimp on campus, and who is the victim going to confide to? There has to be a confidentiality advocate that then can provide support services so that, all students on campus can be protected. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. I actually do have a question for Director Rose really quickly on this measure. One provision that you didn't address in your testimony was the requirement for increased training. So it moved from 25 hours to 35 hours, and then I was wondering if you would need additional resources to address this requirement.
Oh, that's a great question. Oh,
I mean, I'm not offering.
thank
but
you,
I'm
Chair.
asking.
More money, yay! I'm actually really pleased that this requirement is consistent with the support of the community, as the testimony indicates. I think, we would love to have more advocacy support. Currently, we have 6 advocates for our 10 campuses. But I do think that would, in having that training requirement is actually pretty extensive. Unless we're able to get the training through, Angie Mercado's shop through the Coalition Against TV. But that, I know Angie is only once a year. Is it once a year, twice a year? And it's for members.
We're actually, may I address?
Yeah.
Please come to the microphone.
So the training actually applies to all domestic violence advocates, whether they are a confidential advocate through the University of Hawaii system, or they are working through many of our member programs like Domestic Violence Action Center, Child and Family Service, PACT, etc. It actually becomes part of our the state's contracting in various levels of contracts. So one of the roles that the coalition plays in the state, and we're one of 56 in the country, is to provide the training and technical assistance. And what we've actually done is that we've made our existing 25-hour module almost complete. Asynchronous learning with adult learning principles incorporated online. And we had a discussion with my staff this morning about what another 10 hours is going to look like, and it's, come May 4th. So it's something that we already provide for the community. It's something that we would work with Director Rose and how we can make available to campus advocates. And we are fully aware of what needs to happen internally for my organization to add an additional 10 hours of training.
That's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that response.
Can I just add to that? But I do think that what we would love for our advocates to have, because I think they do pretty well, is they understand the process. So I think I would want to include other training on, actually privilege and confidentiality, some advanced concepts. But I think it is a good idea as a best practice to utilize the training that Angie has built, because the training then would be consistent across the state, and then we would add advanced training to that. So I do think there would be some resources there, but we'd be very lucky to be able to use the asynchronous training that the coalition has already developed.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Rep. Martinez.
So when this advocate completed the training, they will be considered a victim counselor?
Yes, that's true already for community advocates if they complete the requisite training that has been approved. So both on the sex assault side and the domestic violence side. And the training that I referenced earlier in my other testimony, that the Attorney General's office, is also a really strong training that can be accessed online. But that would be the requisite training to be able to claim the privilege. And of course, you have to meet the other criteria of the statute to be a primary victim service agency.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we're going to move on to the next measure, which is HB 877, which establishes Ho'okaulike, a criminal legal system institute for restoration and healing at the University of Hawaii, Richardson School of Law. And first, we are supposed to have Dean Osorio in person in support. Is he on Zoom? Okay. Aloha.
Yes, thank you. Sorry I'm not there in person today.
No, you're fine.
Aloha, Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella, and members of the House Committee on Higher Education and Technology. My name is Jonathan Osorio. I am the Dean of Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, but I'm also representing 2 other deans who have participated in partnership with this bill, along with Hawaii Nui Akea. We stand by our testimony, but I would point out that in addition to incarcerating more than 4% of our 0.4% of our population, that is 4 for every 1,000 in our population in Hawaii. Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders incarceration rates are 1.6% of the population of Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders in Hawaii, or 4 times the rate of incarceration of everyone else. But we must also be concerned with policing, particularly as we recognize the potential and actual police violence against Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, and people of color. The extent to which the focus on arming and preparing officers to treat certain situations and certain groups of people as threats has the potential to become a systematic intergenerational repetition of tragedies and traumas, as we are witnessing in Memphis and so many other American cities these past few years. The deans of the Richardson Law School, the Thompson School of Social Work, and Hawaii Nui Akea are gratified that this bill is being introduced by the House Committee on Higher Education and Technology, because we believe that this growing crisis in America and in Hawaii is an issue for higher education, and especially in the land-grant institution that we are. If implemented, Ho'okaulike could serve as the hub for other interdisciplinary engagement, collaboration, and expertise on how we address chronic problems plaguing the criminal justice system. For instance, agricultural systems and food insecurity, health disparities, and other social determinants of health across the islands. The University of Hawaii has the mission, the experience, and the deep resolve to provide research, data, and useful public engagement to work with policymakers, courts, police departments, and the civil sector for what needs to be a change in the outlook and expectations for policing, prosecution, and rehabilitation in our islands. Mahalo for this opportunity to speak in favor of HB 877, and I will remain behind to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for your work. Next, we have Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission in support. We have the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support on Zoom.
Aloha, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members. Nico Sleverins with the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. What a great honor it is to come after Dean Osorio, who put it very well. I support everything he said, and I would also just add that, you know, it's well and good to have a program like this at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, but the legislature cannot shirk its duty to immediately remedy some of the lasting, you know, consequences of the over-incarceration and over-involvement of Native Hawaiians and other people of color in our criminal legal system. Native Hawaiians have been in the crosshairs of the criminal legal system since the establishment of the Republic of Hawaii in 1893 or 94. And we need a wholesale reorientation of our criminal legal system toward something resembling, you know, health and healing. And this includes sentencing, reform of our sentencing laws, reform of our probation and parole practices, reform of our commercial bail system, and reform of police and prosecutorial practices. So hopefully we'll get there a little bit this year, but if not, we're going to keep talking about it, and people are still going to suffer disproportionately. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. In addition, we have testimony in support from 9 other individuals. Members, are there any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to testify? Please come to the microphone.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support of HB 877. This is a matter of statewide concern. The purpose of this act is to appropriate funds for Ho'okaulike, which will be a criminal legal system institute for restoration and healing. Ho'okaulike is the Center for Restoration and Healing within the Richardson School of Law. So, you know, we were just, from a grassroots perspective, we were wondering how will Ho'okaulike balance the criminal justice approach with healing and restoration? How do you teach, you can't just take whatever you want and steal, you can't just sexually abuse someone and get away with it, you can't kill animals and not expect to be brought to justice. I wonder how these principles will be implemented into that program. Hawaii's high recidivism rates demonstrates the inefficiency of our current criminal system in providing inmates with resources that will allow them to be positive contributors to their communities once released. And so 5 years ago, the U.S. Senate passed the First Step Act, a bipartisan effort aimed at curbing recidivism. It provides aid to those behind bars by helping them transition back into civilian life. So we can kind of see an integrated effort and a strong cohesion of vision from the federal and state governments in addressing recidivism and the criminal justice reform through restoration and healing. So we are in strong support of the HB 877. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. And can I just also ask that you submit your testimony so that we have that for the record? Thank you. Members, are there any questions? I have a quick question. Oh, Rip. No, go ahead. Do you have a question, Mariyoshi? Okay. I have a quick question for Dean Osorio.
Sure. Yes.
So my question is, has some of this work already begun around Ho'okaulike, and if so, along what lines?
So what we did, so some of the work that began almost 2 years ago when we applied for a grant with the Kellogg Foundation, it was a racial healing grant, and it was a fairly significant size. We brought a lot of people together at that time throughout the university and quite a few members of the community to look at how we would intervene in the situation that we could see was already in existence then, the over-incarceration of Kanaka Maoli, Pacific Islanders, people of color, and growing antagonism between police and members of our communities. So that was the work that we did. We actually laid out a fairly large plan of attack, which included, among other things, seeding communities with advocates, looking for ways to increase funding for healthcare, childcare, elder care in communities, trying to be sure that there was proper support, especially for poorer communities, where many of these tensions and antagonism seem to grow. That was the work that we began. Those networks are still very much alive for us, but Ho'okaulike in its present form would provide the center for those kinds of collaborations. In addition, we have spoken to other faculty and other deans, including the interim dean of CTAR, Anya, who has indicated to us that part of the solution for strengthening communities, erasing some of the worst aspects of poverty, including food insecurity, lie in agriculture and in the kinds of expertise they have. So at this point, that's where we are. We are creating partnerships. We are looking for more and more collaboration with others. I would mention one other collaboration is through the Center for Creative Design, which is a department in the School of Architecture. The faculty professor Kathy Hoshar is also a member of the Public Service Department. This is a group of a community group which is exploring alternatives or exploring the future for the OCCC site when that is demolished and taken offline, and what will take its place. So, I have actually worked with this committee, and as I said, what we are doing now is mostly establishing these relationships so that when we begin our work together, we'll have the kind of input that we need.
Thank you. Mariyoshi.
Yeah, is there anyone from UH Richardson here? Or anyone who could speak on their behalf?
So I'm very sorry, but Dean Nelson couldn't make it today. Tatine Santel from the School of Social Work is here if you'd like to hear from her.
Sure, my question isn't necessarily directed at UH Law. I'm a little concerned that we're stuffing too many things in Richardson, and I'm wondering if there's a more appropriate or another department or school that we could put this program into.
Well, I do know that, it appears as though so many of the positions are in Richardson, but that's because the primary faculty member, basically the director of this institute, would be a law professor in Richardson. So some of the staff would be there, the APT, the clerk, but the other faculty positions are actually outside of Richardson, with a researcher in Hawaii Nui Akea, a Hawaiian language researcher in Hawaii Nui Akea, a community outreach person in the School of Social Work, and a communications person, basically a data gathering and technology person who could be put almost anywhere. If your concern is that we're putting too many positions in Richardson.
So my concern has always been that Richardson, in my view, and as an alumni of the school, I always thought that the law school needed a little more of a focus on producing attorneys. That is not always my impression, having gone there and being an alumni of Richardson, that the primary purpose of the school is to necessarily produce attorneys. The focus of the school seems over the years to have gone in many different directions, and I'm not saying they're bad directions, but our legal community certainly needs attorneys, good quality attorneys coming out of Richardson. And when we keep putting other things in Richardson, it distracts from their focus of producing a vibrant legal community. This program, I'm wondering if it would be better off housed in the School of Social Work, with the law school assisting, but not necessarily housed there, not distracting from one of the focuses of the law school.
I think that wherever this is housed would not really matter at all. And I wonder if Tatine would like to speak to that.
Aloha, mahalo, John. Aloha, all. I'm Tatine Santel, the interim dean of the Thompson School of Social Work and Public Health. And I really reiterate what Dean Osorio just said, that I think the vision is this is an interdisciplinary activity with solutions based across our units and from expertise throughout the university. And we are where it's housed is less important than the collaborative structure underneath and the fact that we're bridging together all these disciplines towards these important solutions. Mahalo.
So you don't mind taking it?
We would be honored. We would be honored.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions, members? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to HB 1268. And first to testify, we have Darren Okimoto, University of Hawaii, in support.
Aloha, Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella, and members of the HET Committee. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify today in support of House Bill 1268. My name is Darren Okimoto, and I serve as the Associate Director and Extension Leader for the University of Hawaii Sea Grant College Program at UH. Our program supports this bill with the acceptance of the following recommendations to the committee: that the bill's passage does not replace or adversely affect or impact priorities as indicated in UH's Board of Regents approved executive biennium budget, and second, that language pertaining to the submission of the plan to the legislature be modified to prior to the convening of the 2025 legislative session to allow us sufficient time to initiate and complete the strategic planning process and reporting. Sea Grant has been facilitating a Hawaii Aquaculture Collaborative, which is an industry-led partnership whose aim is to facilitate collaborations between the aquaculture industry leaders and relevant state, public, and nonprofit agencies to strengthen and grow aquaculture in the state and thereby increase Hawaii's economic resilience and food security. The collaborative has identified several priorities to strengthen and grow aquaculture in Hawaii, one of which is this development of a 5-year strategic plan. So funding this measure will help the industry to formalize and set clearly defined goals for aquaculture in the state, along with developing a mission and vision that is aligned with the state of Hawaii. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify on this measure.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we have Candace Park, who's testifying from the Attorney General in person, not on Zoom.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, the department just wants to point out the constitutional requirement.
If you could speak into the microphone,
I'm
you're
sorry.
very quiet.
Yes. The department would just like to point out the constitutional requirement that the law have the mandatory language statewide concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Ame Arakaki from Ecoponics in support on Zoom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 1268 today. Our company, it's a small startup, and we work in the aquaponics and hydroponics field. So we do a lot of research, and we looked up, there's few studies, the EBID study of increased food security and food self-sufficiency strategy published in October 2012 shows that Hawaii has an 85 to 90% dependency on importation for various items and commodities. And I listed them in my written testimony, so I don't want to go on too long, but you know, petroleum products, food items, clothing, tissue paper, etc. But another study published by Hawaii's food consumption and supply source, the benchmark estimates and measurements issues published in October 2013, reports importation of foreign source seafood at nearly 48.7%, which means that about half of the ahi poki that you buy at the store, it pretty much originated in a foreign water somewhere in the world. And I think Hawaii can do better. You know, it's just an example of our dependence on importation. So we feel that developing an environmentally conservative aquaculture industry that practices traceability, transparency, and also utilizes local sources of feed, of support, manual labor, that supports the local people is highest importance to every citizen of our state, to get less dependent. And we need another pandemic. We don't need another pandemic to further illustrate this need. So I think we testify that it's very important that this study be done and some type of road work be laid. And we do participate also in the aquaculture consortium that the Sea Grant College puts together every month.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next we have Mike Unabasami, University of Hawaii, in support in person.
I believe this is the wrong one.
Oh,
my testimony is
I
unfortunately.
apologize. I skipped to the wrong page. You are correct. Sorry, I skipped a whole page. Yeah, would you like to testify? Feel free to testify. Other than the folks who just testified, we have 5 other individuals. We have the Hawaii Aquaculture and Aquaponics Association testifying in support, Kulu Haven Farms, LLC in support, Hawaii Farm Bureau in support, and then 2 other individuals in support. So, and Angela, would you like to testify?
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the HET Committee. Angela testifying on behalf of CARES in strong support of HB 1268. Hawaii is an ideal location for aquaculture, the farming of plants and animals in water, from lush green mountains to sandy shores along the ocean. Water abounds throughout Hawaii, providing a myriad of environments for raising seafood, fish, shrimp, abalone, seaweed, macroalgae, tilapia, and various organisms for the aquarium trade. And so the purpose of this act is to create a strategic 5-year plan for aquaculture in the University of Hawaii, and it conducts a strengths and weaknesses and threats analysis on the Department of Agriculture's strategic plan. And we are in full support as it will bring more resources to the vibrant aquaculture here in Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you so much. And again, if you could please just submit your testimony so we can have it for the record. Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we are now going to move on to HB 1407. And first we have Mike Unabasami from University of Hawaii in support and in person.
Aloha. I'm Mike Unabasami, Associate VP for the community colleges, and I stand here on the testimony in support. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. And next we have Candace Park, Deputy Attorney General. Comments?
Hi, again, same concern regarding the law. We would suggest putting in that statewide concern language. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other submissions in terms of testimony. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our final bill, which is HB 1430, which would establish an Institute of Indigenous Education, Science, and Outreach within the University of Hawaii at Hilo. And first up, we have Kaui Kimura from University of Hawaii in support on Zoom. Aloha.
Ai, aloha kako e na nuna maka ainana o ka aha olelo. My name is Kaui Kimura, and I stand on behalf of our Chancellor, Bonnie Irwin, UH Hilo. I stand on our testimony and am available for questions if you have any. Mahalo nui.
Thank you so much. Next we have Candace Park, Deputy Attorney General, with comments.
Hi. Again, statewide concern language would be needed in this law in order for it to be viable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have, in addition to that testimony, we have, Kahea Faria on Zoom with comments.
Aloha, can you hear me? Hi.
Hi, please proceed.
Aloha Ikauko. Aloha Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella of the Committee on Higher Education and Technology. Mahalo for the opportunity to provide comments on HB 1430. In Kane'ohe alone, early education Hawaiian medium sites that are not run by or affiliated with the Ha'apunana Leo. My question and our concern here is centered around the nature of the University of Hawaii system that frowns upon duplicate programs, and a bill here that creates an institute that serves the needs of Hawaii Island, but may unintentionally create an obstacle for other islands. For instance, UH Manoa serves a significantly large number of students learning Hawaiian and those who are training to become teachers as well in our Hawaiian language positions in the DOE and also Hawaiian language immersion schools. Oahu is also home to the majority of Hawaiian medium education schools. Some are preschools operated by the Ha'apunana Leo, but the vast majority of Hawaiian medium schools are public DOE, and charter. If this proposed institute becomes the only program for Hawaiian medium teacher preparation, then we would be putting the largest number of schools and potential students in the Hawaiian Islands at a distinct disadvantage. In addition, many of these potential students have family obligations that would make relocations almost impossible. My question concerning this bill is, do safeguards exist surrounding this bill that will support the growth of similar programs to grow Hawaiian medium teachers on other campuses? And where would that be articulated in the bill? Another thing is, will funding be appropriated equitably among these potential programs for preparing Hawaiian immersion teachers? Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. In addition to that testimony, we have about 54 other individuals submitting testimony, all in support. Members, are there any questions? I have a quick question for the University of Hawaii. If there's anybody here who can respond.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Aloha.
So, and I was really hoping to speak with someone who is operating more on the system level. So I was hoping to speak to President Lasner. But I guess the question is, we are already providing Hawaiian language or instruction, teacher preparation on Oahu, correct?
Correct. As are we doing the same here at Hilo as well, specifically for Hawaiian medium education.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that point. And then also, we got so much testimony in support. I feel like there's already been some groundwork laid around this kind of the establishment of this institute. Can you just give us a little bit of background about the work that's already been done?
Yeah, sure. So this bill is really to help further support and reinforce a pipeline that really began in its establishment 40 years ago with the creation of the Ahapunana Leo, whose sole purpose and mission is to reestablish a living Hawaiian language in its own homeland. And so focusing on early learners and families over the past 40 years, starting from preschools, the pathway has grown now all the way up through K through 12 education, as well as on into the higher education system, through to PhD level degrees. And so UH Hilo has been a part of that consortium with Ahapunana Leo and others to establish this Hawaiian medium education pathway. And in 2004, the College of Hawaiian Language here at UH Hilo was actually legislatively established and mandated through statute to be the state's College of Hawaiian Language, meaning that it is recognized, right, as being the state's entity that supports the further growth of Hawaiian language usage through education and otherwise resource materials for formal and informal education, etc. So this institute is really a continuation of this pathway. I would say it is a pathway, not the pathway, that has grown over 40 years. And we have hopes that through this kind of a structure within the university system, it can afford for greater flexibility for the college and its consortium partners to meet the demand of the statewide demand of teacher preparation and resource materials, family materials that help to support the growth of the language, not just in classrooms, but also outside classrooms within the homes. And I think that's where Emilo's partnership in this comes into play as well, as a bilingual science center working to bring together science and culture for the purpose of providing more learning experiences for Hawaii's keiki and ohana outside of the classroom through our Hawaiian language.
Okay, thank you so much. Members, are there any other questions? We are going to recess for decision making. Okay, reconvening for decision-making on several bills relating to the University of Hawaii. Members, on HB 554, I think the concerns raised by those who submitted testimony, especially focused on student safety, were serious enough to warrant passing this bill out, precisely because it is ambitious. With some amendments, we're going to need to continue this conversation as the bill travels to make sure that the university can effectively build upon the work that you've already started and that you're supported in those efforts. So to that end, we're going to add 4 FTE positions without including any specific appropriation amounts. But in the committee report, I would note that you are seeking somewhere in the area of $1 million. And then an additional amendment will be to correct page 3, line 11 through page 4, line 20. So essentially eliminating subsection 3B and making the text of subsection 3A a standalone section 3. So creating 2 different deadlines in statute, one for existing employees and one for new employees, and I'll specify the text with HMSO. And my recommendation then, after those amendments, is to defect the date, blank out any appropriation amounts, and yeah, that's my recommendation. Any questions or concerns, members? Seeing none, Rep. Mariyoshi.
Yeah, I am going to be voting yes on this bill, but it does concern me that there is no appropriation in it right now. And I appreciate the blank appropriation, the note in the committee report. I do not think I would be for this bill if the appropriate money is not allocated. So I just wanted to kind of go on the record and state that I don't want to set UH up for failure if we're not adequately funding this program. So if the program is adequately funded, it sounds like a great idea, but if we're not going to be funding it, I don't think we should be pushing it on UH without that. Thank you, Chair.
Great point. Thank you so much. No other comments? Vice Chair, for the vote.
Voting on HB 554, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Martin.
Aye.
Representative Martinez.
Aye.
Representative Mariyoshi.
Aye.
Representative Quinlan. Excused. Representative Todd. Excused. Representative Woodson.
Aye.
Representative Garcia.
No.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 580, my recommendation is to pass this bill, defecting the date to July 1st, 3000, and blanking out any appropriation amounts. Questions, comments, and concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair, for the vote.
Voting on HB 580, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the excused absences of Representatives Quinlan and Todd. Members, are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 877, which establishes the Ho'oka'alike. My recommendation is to pass this bill out of committee, noting the conversation around the citing of the Institute, and asking that the next committee take this issue up in conversation in their hearing, blanking out any appropriation amounts and defecting the date to July 1st, 3000. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I have one, Chair.
Rep. Mariyoshi.
I just want to reemphasize that I really think the law school needs to refocus itself on creating attorneys. There are a lot of classes that are simply not offered at the law school anymore because of lack of staff and lack of focus, I think, on law. And while I can appreciate this program and a lot of the other programs that they're doing, it does distract from the main purpose of the law school. And we in the legal community have noticed a dip in, I would say, quality of attorneys coming out of the law school, which is concerning. So I would prefer that this program go forward, but with maybe housed in the School of Social Work or another branch. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair, for the vote.
Voting on HB 877, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Members, are there any reservations? Any noes?
No.
No vote, Representative Garcia. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1268, which is requiring the UH Sea Grant College Program to contract with an independent consultant for the development of a 5-year plan. For aquaculture, my recommendation is to pass with 2 amendments. The first is to change section 1B, lines 6 through 9. And the second is to change the language pertaining to the submission of the statewide plan from prior to convening of the 2024 legislative session to prior to the convening of the 2025 legislative session, to give them adequate time to complete the report or blanking out any appropriation amounts. Noting that this bill addresses issues, I think noting in the preamble, so amending the preamble to make sure that this bill will be addressing issues as a matter of statewide concern and affecting the date to July 1st, 3000. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1268, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Members, are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1407, which supports water testing on the island of Maui. My recommendation is to pass this bill out of committee, again adding the language in the preamble that identifies this issue as a matter of statewide concern, defecting the date and blanking out any appropriation amounts. That's it. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1407, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Members, are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. And our last bill, HB 1430. My recommendation is to pass this bill out of committee, again changing the language in the preamble to add that this measure will address issues of statewide concern. Defecting the date and blanking out any appropriation amounts. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1430, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Members, are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Mahalo. Thank you, members. Adjourned.